application for postponement that has been brought by Colonel Mshlongo. He was asked to testify today. He's been implicated by General Boyson, and he was asked to testify in respect of those aspects raised by General Boyson. Perhaps it's appropriate that my learned colleagues address you on the postponement, and after that, with your leave, I will make certain submissions to you with regard to that application.
But with what we are supposed to do today?
Today, we have 3 witnesses who are set down. The first is Colonel Mshlongo. The second is Terence Joubert. And the third is Edward Zuma. If you would like me to deal with all 3 at this stage, I will, or would you like to deal with the first deal with this application?
Tell me what is the position with them?
With the other witnesses?
With the ones you have mentioned?
Yes. With regard to Colonel Mshlongo, he has brought an application which we will deal with. I can address you on the background to his evidence, just for the purposes of the public and understanding what his evidence is about.
No, I understand the context.
Yes.
I just want you to address me on what is going to happen, what's the plan about those 3 witnesses?
The plan about the application for a postponement is the attitude of the evidence leaders is that that application should be granted, although I would like to address you on the issues that have been raised in the affidavit, just to place on record what has transpired between the Commission and Mr. Mshlongo's attorneys. But after discussion with them, it is felt that there are aspects that merit a postponement, and the reasons for that are that affidavits have come in late. The second is that one of the main aspects that in respect of which Mr. Mshlongo was implicated was that a person called Terence Joubert had deposed to an affidavit annexed to General Boyson's affidavit, in which he had stated that he had been approached by Colonel Mshlongo in order to dig up dirt on Advocate Nkosana.
Well, you are now going into the into aspects of the postponement application.
Yes.
I thought you wanted to do that later.
Yes,
I wanted you to tell me
okay.
what are your plans about the 3 witnesses? That's all I wanted to hear.
Yes. In respect of the second witness, who is Mr. Joubert, what has transpired, Chair, is that he deposed to us, which is also related to Colonel Mshlongo's affidavit. He deposed to an affidavit in support of an affidavit deposed to by General Boyson. In that affidavit, he indicated that he had been approached by Mr. Colonel Mshlongo.
Yeah, no, you are going into the merits. I wanted you to say, so-and-so will testify, so-and-so will testify,
Yes.
so-and-so will not testify.
No.
You can deal with the reasons later,
Yes.
if anybody is not going to testify.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The long and short is that Mr. Joubert will not testify today, but Edward Zuma will testify.
Okay, let me hear Mr. Mshlongo's application. You want to just place yourself on record again?
Thank you. Chairperson, I'm Manala M.E. I'm instructed by Maringa attorneys and we both appear for Colonel Mhlongo,
Yes.
who is then scheduled to give testimony today.
Yes.
And we've since then prepared an application for the postponement of his testimony.
Yes.
And if you permit me then, Chair, I'll take you through the application.
Yes.
Chairperson, the starting point is that Colonel Mhlongo was given a notice in terms of Rule 3, informing him that he was implicated by Major General Boysen. Now, he was referred specifically, I believe, to paragraph 42 up until paragraph 46 of Boysen's affidavit. And there arose two issues. The first was that there is a recording which evidences wrongdoing on the part of Mhlongo, and the other part was that there is also an affidavit that evidences wrongdoing on his part. So there were two complaints that he had then to address. In dealing with the complaints, he asked then to receive a copy of this recording, which is mentioned as the first complaint. And we've since then been told that even if that recording is to be given, we would require specific equipment in order for us to be able to listen to that. But we've now been told that arrangements have been put in place to enable us to listen to that recording. So that would then address the first complaint that we have in relation to the audio. That is the audio recording.
When was the first request made for that recording?
So, Chairperson, what you would have noted is that when the affidavit was presented, that is the first affidavit, an answering affidavit was put up, and after the answering affidavit was put up, a replying affidavit followed. Now, when we received the replying affidavit, we then responded with a supplementary affidavit, and it is in that supplementary affidavit that we then mentioned that we require to be placed in possession of those recordings. I'm trying, Chairperson, to get the date of the supplementary affidavit, but I can assure you, Chairperson, it is sometime in September.
Last year?
September last year, yes, 2019. So that was then put in, and there was correspondence all along.
After that?
After that.
Yes.
The latest part of that correspondence concluded on the 23rd, Thursday, last week, 23rd of July, 2020. And it was then that we were told that even if we were to be given that, you will not be able to listen to it because it requires specific equipment.
Or that is now recently?
Yes, we were told then recently. So that is insofar as that complaint is concerned. But related to that complaint, Chairperson, there would have been two other affidavits that then followed. That is the affidavits of Padiaki, I believe it's General Padiaki. Yes, so those two affidavits, the one gives somewhat of an account of what is being said in those recordings.
Yes.
However, we are of the view that what is stated there is not necessarily a verbatim account of what transpired there. And we want to ascertain ourselves as to whether that which is being said is exactly as it appears from the recording. And that affidavit, Chair, was then availed, I believe, on the 10th or the 9th of July, 2020. That is the first leg of the complaint. That is the basis for our postponement. The second leg pertains to an affidavit of Terence Joubert. What has happened here, Chairperson, in the first affidavit which was given, there was an affidavit attached, I believe it is the affidavit dating 2013. We responded to that allegation and put up an affidavit of 2016.
And that was last year?
Yes, that is.
When you responded and put up a 2016 affidavit?
Yes, indeed, it was last year. So when we put up that 2016 affidavit, we then said, as far as we are aware, there's an affidavit that says that first affidavit is wrong and that it's a forgery and all of those things. So we then proceeded with the matter on the basis that there is no first affidavit. In fact, the correct position is as set out in the second affidavit. Now, recently, Chairperson, Terence Joubert has changed tune. He has deposed to a third affidavit, and that affidavit we received on Sunday. This is the 26th of July. We received that affidavit on Sunday. In this third affidavit, he now resuscitates the first affidavit, and he says the second affidavit was wrong, and that is the affidavit on which we then relied all along. So the sum total, Chairperson, of all of this is that we need to reconsider our position in relation to those options that are available in terms of Rule 3, to decide whether or not this would be the best way or that would be the best way. And for that purpose, Chair, we require a postponement in order to deal with those aspects.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes, why was, why did the commission not give the recording much earlier to Mr. Mhlongo? Switch on the mic.
Chair, with respect, as was indicated by my learned colleague, there was a lot of correspondence that followed that first request. What the Commission first thought was requested was the recording that was played during the evidence of Colonel Boyson. And there was correspondence stating that. Then the issue of the recording of the transcripts, I mean the recordings, the Act 70 recordings, those recordings were never in the possession of the Commission. The Commission has never had them. A summons was issued and Colonel Padiachi provided those recordings to the Commission yesterday. For the first time, the Commission saw certain transcripts relating to Colonel Mhlongo, relating to those recordings. It is our understanding that there are very strict requirements with regard to the evidence chain of those recordings.
That recording that you're talking about is the one that General Boyson testified about, isn't it?
That is the recording that the Commission initially thought was being requested. When it then became apparent that the recording that was requested is the actual Act 70 recordings done by Colonel Padiachi, the Commission has never been in possession of those recordings.
No, let's get clarification.
Yes.
During his evidence, Major General Boyson, if I recall correctly, testified about a certain recording.
Yes.
I'm asking whether the recording that Mr. Mhlongo asked for is the recording that Major General Boyson testified about.
Chair, if you're talking about the recording on the telephone done by Terence Joubert, that recording was provided. It was provided pursuant to a Rule 3.3 notice, and it was subsequently provided.
No, I'm not talking about that one. It may be that Major General Boyson testified about two recordings.
Yes.
Well, I think both are important.
Chair?
There is the recording. He testified, the one that I remember well, he testified about is the one relating to or connected with the the investigation of Mr. Pandey
Yes,
that was done in terms of some statutory provisions.
yes.
Yeah. Is that the one that Mr. Mhlongo asked for?
Well, it appears that that was requested at a later stage, and it arose in these circumstances, Chair. What occurred is that, in fact, the affidavit of Colonel Padiachi, annexed to Boyson's affidavit, did not deal at all with Colonel Mhlongo's evidence.
Okay.
What occurred
which
is that
recording did Mr. Mhlongo ask for? That's what I'm trying to, I want to identify it
yes,
first so we know what we're talking about.
yes, it was that recording, but Chair, you will remember
It was which recording?
it was the Act 70 recording.
Okay, yes, now we know what you're talking about. That's
Yes.
that one, Major General Boyson did testify about that, I recall.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, what then occurred is General Boyson testified, this is what was told to me by Colonel Padiachi, who was the person in charge of the Act 70 interceptions. He was the person who actually listened to the recordings. So you will remember, Chair, that the response that then came was, I don't need to deal with this because it's hearsay.
What response are you talking about? Why would I know that response?
Chair, in the application to adduce evidence, and in fact, there wasn't an application brought by Colonel Mhlongo to adduce evidence. It was an application in terms of which he deposed to an affidavit, in which he said, I would like to just place this affidavit before the commission, and he didn't ask that he actually testify before the commission. That was an issue that then arose when this matter was set down.
Ms. Wenzel, you are all over the place.
Yes,
I'm trying to make sure we are on the same page.
yes,
I thought we have identified what recording we're talking
Yes.
about. You see, Mr. Mhlongo's application for a postponement seems to be based on two things. One, that he asked for a recording, quite some time back, and was only told recently that it's available, but certain equipment would be needed for him to be able to listen to it.
yes.
So I'm trying to establish which recording are we talking about.
We
and
are
from
not-
what you have said is the recording that Major General Boyson spoke about relating to the interception of telephones. Is that
Yes.
right?
That is correct.
Yes. Now, why was it not supplied to Mr. Mhlongo all along?
Chair, because those recordings have never been in the possession of the Commission.
Yes. Why did the commission ask for them?
Chair, as I understand it, those recordings cannot be given to the Commission. They cannot
But
be
have they
handed
not been
over to
given
the
now?
Commission. No, Chair, they are given to us in a reserved manner, and the manner in which they are
could have
provided
been
to
given
us.
in a reserved manner a long time ago.
Chair, that might be, but it was not anticipated what had occurred, and that's why I just would like to give you some background.
No, I don't want a long background. There
No.
are two issues. Mr. Mhlongo seeks a postponement because despite having asked for the recording many months ago, that was not given to him. So that's why I want to know, why was that not done? Because we are now faced with a situation where there must be a postponement. And yet already last year, he had indicated, from what I understand, that he needed this. And now his application, if this was indicated in September last year, that means it's been about 9 months or 10, I'm not sure. It's been about 9 months. So my question is, why did the commission not make sure that he got this on time?
Chair, the answer to this is, in fact, simple, because even if the Commission had summoned Colonel Pariachi to bring his recording, he cannot give that recording to the Commission. The Commission cannot play that recording.
What did the Commission do to try and get the recording?
Well, to be honest, Chair, what occurred was in preparing for the evidence of Colonel Mhlongo, at that stage, the issue that he had raised was you don't need to listen to what Colonel Boyson says Colonel Padiachi told him. Why? Because it's hearsay. As a result of that, steps were then taken.
Major General Boyson says, I'm aware of a certain recording.
Yes.
And that recording contains a conversation that's relevant to the work of the Commission. Why should the Commission not say, let's take steps to get that recording?
Yes, Chair. I appreciate that point. What I can only say to you, Chair, is I didn't lead the evidence of Colonel Boyson. I wasn't involved in it, and it was only in the course of preparation of Colonel Mhlongo's evidence that this issue arose,
but
and
you have
steps
been
were then
involved
taken.
in law enforcement for quite some time, isn't it?
I was, but Colonel Boyson's evidence was laid before I joined the Commission. And to be honest, Chair, in preparing for this, the first thing that occurred to me is we need to get that recording. And steps were then immediately taken to get that recording.
It happens late. It should have happened a long time ago. And in which case we would not be having to postpone and lose a day. We don't have much time as a Commission.
Yes, Chair.
And the first people who must make sure we use all the time we have are ourselves as the Commission. The legal team has got to make sure that these things are looked at long in advance before the date of hearing. As soon as some affidavit comes in, I mean, there are work streams in the Commission. There's the law enforcement agents. There are people who are dedicated to that, including members of the legal team. And I've always said the investigations must be guided and directed by the legal team.
Yes, I understand.
Which means I'm not going to blame the investigators. The legal team are supposed to look at affidavits and say, this is what we need, this is what we need, this witness must be interviewed, and so on. We are going to need that. We are going to need that recording and drive the process. And they are the ones who know what will be acceptable legally at the hearing in terms of evidence. And then the affidavit that of Mr. Yube, because they rely on two things, is the fact that they were not given the recording, two, that they only were given the latest affidavit of Mr. Yube on Sunday.
Yes.
Why was that affidavit only obtained so recently or given to them so recently?
Chair, at all times, Mr. Jabir was represented by an attorney. There was communication, constant communication between the Commission and that attorney. It was only, as I understand it, on Friday or Saturday morning that the affidavit was provided to the Commission. Once it was provided, steps were immediately taken to write a letter to to Mr. Mhlongo's attorneys and enclose that affidavit. So, with respect, Chair, that was not an issue that was within the realm of the Commission. What then transpired is that having had that affidavit...
I guess that with regard to Mr. Yube, the Commission may have been content that there are two affidavits deposed to by him, one relied upon by Mr. Nxasana in his evidence, another one relied upon by Mr. Mhlongo in his affidavit,
Yes.
and the commission had made arrangements for the person who administered the oath to Mr. Yobe in regard to the first affidavit to come and give evidence to say he knows Mr. Yobe and he took his oath freely and voluntarily in regard to the first affidavit, and that Mr. Yobe was going to have to explain on the witness stand why there was a second affidavit.
Yes.
So from the commission side, there might not have been an arrangement for an affidavit. Mr. Yobe would have to explain in the witness stand about how the second affidavit came about.
Yes, but the fact of the matter is that through his attorney, the commission did receive the third affidavit. And in that affidavit, he says, my second affidavit is not correct and my first affidavit is correct. He then, after that, Chair, has had communication with the commission saying this third affidavit he is now deposed to is an affidavit that was not in accordance with his attorney's instructions. As I understand it, he still says that the first affidavit is correct, but there's certain aspects in it that he doesn't like. His attorney has now withdrawn, and we are now faced with him now having to explain this issue
Well, he will
before
have
the
to
commission.
explain. I think what will be necessary is that a date will have to be determined when Mr. Yobe must take the witness stand. He can explain whatever he wants to explain on the witness stand. Mr. Mhlongo's lawyers will advise Mr. Mhlongo about whether it's necessary to file any response to that affidavit. But I think what will be important is to fix a date, let Mr. Yobe take the witness stand and explain himself. Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
All right. That's fine. I'm going to postpone the hearing of Mr. Mhlongo's evidence to a date to be determined. And if Mr. Mhlongo elects to respond to that affidavit, we will see when that happens. But otherwise, the date for Mr. Mhlongo's next appearance will be determined. The application brought by Mr. Colonel Mhlongo for the postponement of the hearing of his evidence is granted, and the date will be determined for him to appear before the commission in due course.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, all right.
Chair, if if the proceedings might stand down just for 10 minutes so I can take some instructions from William Nicholson about the witness who is due to appear, Mr. Edward Zuma.
I don't want to adjourn. I want you to take 1 minute to talk to him and then let's continue. I think Mr. Halley wants to talk to you as well.
Chair, perhaps if Mr. Nicholson can address you because he has been dealing with this.
Yeah, well, maybe let's talk about, I think, Mr. Halley, you want to, I think, allow Mr. Halley to address me.
Thank you.
Yeah. They must just sanitize.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Mr. Chair, as the leader of the law enforcement team, let me tender to yourself, to the team for Mr. Mhlongo, and of course to the South African public, my sincere apologies in relation to some of the mix-ups that have occurred. I wasn't specifically dealing with that particular application, but I accept full responsibility for it, and I tender my sincere apologies. I will certainly investigate the matter further.
I think bring the mic a little closer to you.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
As your voice is not as audible as it should be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've said, I sincerely apologize for that. I will investigate the matter, and I will place a full report before you, Mr. Chair.
I must say that, of course, you joined the commission late. Some of the things happened when you were not here. But
I accept the responsibility nevertheless, Mr. Chair.
yes.
Mr. Chair, just one matter that has, and I fear that Ms. Wenzel may have said something which might have given an incorrect impression, and I just wanted her, perhaps through herself, to have corrected it. It must be emphasized that we do not have, the Commission does not have the recording in respect of that Panday discussion. We still don't have the recording. We have listened to the recording.
Yes.
We cannot obtain the recording. What we've managed to get most recently is simply the transcript.
Yes.
And that is what will be made available. What we can make available to the other side is the opportunity to listen to that recording. But the recording itself, even if we had it, and even if we made it available to the other side, which, as I understand it, we cannot obtain, but even if we did that, they would not be able to listen to it because it's encrypted. One requires specific machinery to be able to listen to the recording. So in the first instance, we don't have it. We still don't have it, but we have listened to it. And I think,
How do you listen to it without having it?
No, because we've got the machinery. We've got the person who has the machinery and who has the recording. So we've at least managed to do that. But without the machinery, I suppose we can dispose of the person who has the machinery, but we can't dispose of the machinery. We require the machinery in order to listen to it.
But I take
that's as far as that's the only point that I wanted to correct.
I take it if somebody within the commission, if you are able to listen to it, arrangements could be made for them to listen it to wherever you listen to it.
That's what we've conveyed to our other friends, and we will do that today. But what we will also do is...
you won't be able to give them anything other than the transcript.
We won't be able to give them anything other than the transcript. In fact, we can't even allow them to make a recording of the recording.
Yeah. Okay, as long as they can hear what you have heard. Yeah, I'm sure that should not be a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. And then somebody must talk to me about the witness.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning, Mr. Nicholson.
Mr. Chair, a witness will also have appeared today as Captain Edward Zuma. Captain Edward Zuma is a retired member of the Hawks. When we managed to get hold of him about 3 weeks ago, I personally spoke to him, and he conveyed to me that his wife had contracted COVID, or somebody in his household had contracted COVID. He's displaying all the symptoms, and he went for all the tests. Last week, when I got hold of him, he still had not had his test results, and I've been trying to get hold of him this entire week, and I can't get hold of him. The issue is he's now retired, so we can only call him on his cell phone. He does not even have a email. With regard to, I did convey to him because with the discussion we had with the DCJ, we did convey to him that he may be able to testify remotely. He said he was willing to do that, but since then, when I've been trying to phone him to make those arrangements, I just couldn't get hold of him. And I have been phoning him every single day from last week. With regard to the issue he was to testify about, Mr. Terence Juba is present, and I confirmed with him again this morning that he does not detract from the affidavit that was commissioned by Captain Edward Zuma.
Well, the thing about Mr. Yube is he seems to have deposed to an affidavit in 2016, in which he denied the affidavit of 2013. And from what Ms. Wenzel was saying, we have an affidavit, the recent affidavit, and it appears that he is querying some aspects of that affidavit as well. So it does make it difficult to know what else he will deny before the next date he takes the witness stand.
Indeed, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as I understand, Mr. Juba does not deny the first affidavit, and he still maintains it.
As of today.
I beg your pardon?
As of today.
Not
he
as
does
of today.
not deny.
No, not as of today. Okay, if I can just give a brief background. The affidavit was sent to me late on Friday. That's when I distributed it to the Secretariat, and I made arrangement for it to be distributed to Mr. Mhlongo. Late on Saturday evening, I received a call from Mr. Joubert, where he explained to me that his explanation for why he made the second affidavit was not part of his instructions, but he stands with the first affidavit.
Well, is Mr. Joubert in this room?
He's present.
It may be that, for what it's worth, even if for whatever reason he might not be able to give evidence that covers everything, it may well be that at least he should take the stand and confirm in front of me whether he still stands by that affidavit of 2013, because if he does that, we may not need to call Mr. Zuma for another date.
Indeed, Mr. Chair.
It may well be that we might need to do that, but I think counsel for Mr. Mhlongo are excused. But you might wish to reflect that and maybe discuss with Mr. Halley, Mr. Nicholson, as to what may need to be done about Mr. Zuma. So I think I will adjourn to enable all of you to talk about what should happen. I'll adjourn for 10 minutes. We adjourn.
All rise.
What have you decided?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Juba is here and he is willing to confirm that affidavit.
Yeah, let's do that then.
May you
Please
take the oath?
administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Terence John Uber.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Yube, for coming to give evidence. As I understand the position, you were going to be able to give full evidence, but it appears that there are some procedural issues that have not been sorted out that the legal team needs to attend to, and you'll be asked to come back on another date. But it seems important that you give evidence with regard to at least the aspect of whether or not you acknowledge the affidavit of 2013 as being an affidavit that you took, and that there are no issues about it, because if that is so, it would not be necessary for Mr. Zuma to be called, who was the Commissioner of Oaths. So I thought, let me explain that to you. Mr. Nicholson, continue then.
Mr. Juba,
Yes, sir.
you have a bundle in front of you. If you turn to Y11, you see the bundle. Mr. Chair, it's LEA 10. It's LEA 10. I think the bundle's being handed to. I apologize, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's bundle LEA 10.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay.
The LEA 10, Mr. Chair.
Don't speak too far away from the mic.
LEA 10 has 3 exhibits in it. The exhibit we're going to look at is exhibit Y11. So there's exhibit Y10 and there's exhibit Y11.
And at what page is it?
Mr. Chair, it's in a folder, in a blue folder. So it's in a blue folder. So
Yeah, but what is the page number?
it starts afresh from 1 again. It starts afresh from page number 1.
Page number 1.
So if you go to the file, you'll see the file has 3 blue folders. The first one is Y10, the second one is Y11.
Well, if you tell me the page number, that should be enable me to go there. At page
Chair, that's
page 1 appears to be the index. Page 1, page 2 is the filing notice.
if the chair would go to 210, page 210,
210.
210. After 210, the chair would see that there's a folder Y11.
Why does it look like that, the pagination is not in order here?
Chair, what I think this is, I think that possibly it would be preferable if each exhibit goes into a separate file, because then it will run from one to the end of the file. But in this case, we've got 3 different exhibits, so it runs to one, to the end of the exhibit. In the next exhibit, it starts at 1 again.
Yeah, but I've spoken about that quite a few times. That's not the way the pagination should be done.
Indeed, Chair. What I would endeavor to do, since we're only going to deal with one exhibit here, is perhaps to remove the other exhibits out of the file and put them into separate files.
I mean, I had a conversation with members of, I think, I don't know if you were there yourself, but Mr. Harley and Ms. Wenzel were there. We had a discussion, was it early in the week? Was it on Monday? Or was it last week? When
Remotely.
I clarified this issue of pagination.
Indeed, I was present.
Yes, so why is this bundle that was meant to be used today not paginated in the way that I said they should be paginated?
Mr. Chair, as I understand, it's the file is not paginated in the way that the chair requires from what I understand from the chair now. But each individual bundle,
No, I'm asking why is it not paginated the way in which I said files should be paginated?
Chair, this is the way I understood the files ought to be paginated, and the paginating team, the bundle team, also understood it to be this way.
Well, the pagination is not in order.
Would it help, Chair, if we simply removed the bundles? So in other words, we take out Y10, we put it in a separate file, we take out Y11, and we put it into a separate file, and we do the same with Y12.
You see, the pagination that I've explained is simple. You have page 1 at the beginning, and it's sequential up to the end. It makes it easy. You don't need to tell me many things. You just say, for the next document that I'm referring you to, you go to page so and so. There is one page 20 in the bundle. There is only one page 40. There is only one page 5. There aren't many pages 5. You see, if you arrange it to have different pagination for different sections in the file, you end up with different page numbers appearing in different sections. That doesn't make things easy. The best way to do this is, you see, I have to struggle now to find, so there's an affidavit of Mr. Yobert that I'm coming across
It's at Y11.
somewhere.
The affidavit we're going to deal with today, Mr. Chair.
It is 3 pages, that the one that I'm at.
There's
And
page 20, 21, and 22. It's Y11, TJJ 0, 20, 21, and 22.
Mr. Yube,
Yes.
you know about the 3 affidavits that we are talking about that you have signed, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, the one was signed in 2013, another one was signed in 2016, and I understand another one was signed recently, is that correct?
That's correct.
You know also that the one that is signed was deposed to in 2016, effectively disowns the affidavit of 2013, is that correct? It denies what is in that affidavit, or denies that you know about that affidavit, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. And in the 3rd affidavit that you signed recently, you explained how the affidavit of 2016 came about, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, in the affidavit of 2013, you testified about certain matters that you heard about from Colonel Mhlongo, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And you had recorded him, is that correct?
That's also correct.
Who did you depose to, before whom did you depose to that affidavit?
It was commissioned by Captain Zuma at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
That affidavit, did you depose to it voluntarily and freely?
That's correct.
Yes. And the signature that appears in that affidavit is
Is
your
mine.
signature? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you have no queries about the fact that you made that affidavit,
None whatsoever, sir.
and you stand by it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I think for present purposes, that's what we needed to be dealt with. And then another arrangement will be made for you to come back, and then you can give evidence about the content. And you will also explain how the 2nd affidavit came about. And if in the 3rd affidavit, there is the recent one, there is something that's not true, you will explain that as well.
That's correct.
Or if you want to put in a supplementary affidavit where you explain some things in the recent affidavit that you feel are not accurate, that's fine as well.
Okay. Thank you.
All
sir.
right. Okay, all right. I'm going to release you, and arrangements will be made for you to come back.
Okay.
So you are excused. But we are going to adjourn just now. On Monday, I will be hearing the evidence of Judge Makubele. And for the rest of next week, I will hear evidence relating to certain allegations of corruption in the Free State. So that's what will happen next week. For tomorrow, I will hear the evidence of Mr. Sandile July in relation to the rendition matter and his investigation. That's just for the benefit of the media and the public. We are going to adjourn now for the day. We adjourn.
All rise.